Tony. Yeah, obviously I'm here with Jim Richards, so very thankful to have his time. But yeah, I just wanted to introduce him. So Jim Richards is here with me. He was inducted to the New Zealand Motor Racing Hall of Fame in 1994, and after a record number of starts and 7 victories in Bathurst 1000 and 4 Australian Touring Car Championships, Jim Richards was inducted into the V8 Supercars Hall of Fame in 2006 and the Australian Motorsports Hall of Fame in 2015. So fantastic stuff. But yeah, the car on display behind us is his 1990 HR31 GDSR championship winning car, which was the start of the dominant era for Nissan in Australian motorsport. So I'll just throw to Jim and allow him to introduce himself.
Hi guys, I probably have seen a few of you before at many years ago at one of the functions. It was great to come back and have a chat, because I've forgotten most of the questions, so you might have forgotten most of the answers, so we can just keep going.
Thanks, Jim. That's great. So we got, as Tony said, we've got a few questions from the club members that submitted through Facebook and through email, through newsletter. So I'll just ask you some of those.
Yep, fine.
So one of the questions was, besides the GTR, this club member's favourite memory of Jim was the black Johnny Player Special BMW. Can I ask him to describe what the 2 cars were like to race and drive? Thanks.
Well, the M3 Nissan was basically a lightweight, small 4-cylinder car, and in its day, it was the best car to have. Ultra reliable, a bit like the GTR, to be honest. But of course, not as quick as the GTR by any means of the imagination. But to drive them, both similar but different, because the GTR had like about 680 horsepower and the little M3 had 300. But of course, there was 500 kilos of weight difference. So, you know, any race car you drive is good at what it's good at. And depending on the class and the size of the car and the size of the engine and the grip that you've got, the GTR obviously was a lot faster, but I really enjoyed driving the GTR. But I actually, one of my favourite cars to drive was the HR31 behind me. I really liked that car. I liked it so much that I bought it.
That's great.
But yes, in the GTRs, basically, without sounding a little bit not showing off, but the GTRs were great to drive, don't get me wrong, but you knew that either Mark, Scaife or I were going to win before the race started, because that was just the advantage the GTR had. They put more weight on us to try and slow us down, but the guys just kept developing the engine, and basically, you know, we overcame the weight problem, and it still became a winning car. But really loved those days when I first joined Nissan. There was no, I didn't know anything about the GTR. There was no promises of what could or may not happen in the future, but I was just keen to join Fred Gibson's team, basically to lead it and hopefully win the championship. But we knew we'd have a very hard job winning the total series in the HR31. But knowing that the GTR was going to come on song at the end of the year, fortunately, it won the last race of the season, and that just propped us up to win the championship. So great fond memories of the Nissans, that's for sure.
Brilliant. All right. Well, I got another question from the club. There's a few here, but did the R32 GTR have you raced, the first GTR you raced, have a dial for adjusting the front to rear bias, or was it still controlled by computer via G-sensor?
Well, it had G-sensors in the car, but we had a device which was made locally on the tunnel of the car, a little switch, and it had full 4-wheel drive, half 4-wheel drive, and basically no 4-wheel drive. But we also had a start mode. Because the car has so much grip from the tyres, the car, when you revved it up and dropped the clutch, it would just stall, or it would bugger the clutch.
Yeah.
So they put a program in their little computer that made up to put a start mode, and start mode told the car that it was 2-wheel drive car. But 2 or 3 seconds after you dropped the clutch and the car got going, then you could change the program on the dash and it went to normal four-wheel drive. So we could adjust it so we get good starts and then have the advantage of four-wheel drive on the race.
That's awesome. That's a really clever setup.
Yeah, no, it was developed locally by Fred's Nissan Motorsport team.
Yep, brilliant. All right. Well, the next question from our members is there are now 3 generations of Richards competing in motorsport. Were you just as nervous at Clay's first big event as you were with Steve?
The funny thing about it, that was the fact that, when Steve, if anyone asks you, why don't you think it's dangerous for your son? And of course you would say, no, he's right. They're safe as the church. But secretly down in your guts, you thought, I hope he doesn't do anything mad. But well, I was a bit nervous, more nervous in the Formula Fords than I was in anything else, because they're not that strong and they've got wheels hanging out everywhere. But the good thing about it was that when Clayton got to drive his Formula Ford for the very first time, I went to Winton to watch, and Steve sort of said to me under the quiet, he said, I'm shitting myself. I don't know how he's going to go. I said, well, now you know what I went through.
Yeah, no, I can imagine that would have been nerve-wracking for sure. All right. What race car setup mistakes do most people make, and where does the average driver lose most time on track, in your opinion?
Well, obviously the most time on track, I mean, most people can go around the corner as quick as one another, but it's to have the car balanced so you can physically go around the corner a little bit quicker.
Yeah.
But a lot of the guys lose a fair bit of time under brakes. You've got to maximise your braking effort.
Yeah.
And that means making sure the car's got the right disc pads in it.
Yep.
To suit, and that you actually use all the track that's available to you.
Makes sense. Yeah. Obviously, you don't want the car to be unsettled. So.
No.
Yeah.
No, but you need to, if you're going to save time, you need to brake later than everyone else, but still to be able to stop the car.
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. All right. One of the members has asked, what is your favorite daily drive?
Well, I've got a Porsche Macan, which is a smaller SUV, and it's a diesel model, and really for everyday driving, it's just brilliant. It's got lots of power down low, just off the mark. Does 6.5 litres per 100k or something silly, and it's just really, really good. Goes good, does everything good. But as a road car, I've driven. I've got an RS275 Renault, and I've got a little 3 Series BMW. So I've got a few that I like driving every now and again. But I was going to go on a trip to Adelaide or wherever.
Yeah.
I think I'll probably go in the Macan.
Yeah, makes sense. Comfort and reliability is definitely a good option for sure. Another member has asked, what is the most fun race car you've driven? I think you've already answered that, talking about it.
Yes, I mean the thing is, what happens when you start your career? I had a little 105 Anglia, which I can see some of the faces there are probably around my age, so they probably know the 105 Anglia. And I was saying to Dan, I mean, when I first went out on the track, I never. There was no way I'd ever win a race. I just, that wasn't what I went out for. I went out to compete and drive the car as fast as I could. I came second to last in the first few races because I was in a class called all comers. So I was racing against Chevy Coupes with V8 engines, and I was racing against all sorts of weird and wonderful things. And so I was at the back of the field, but there was always someone to race. And I just enjoyed driving the car as fast as I could. And if that meant second to last or if it meant midfield, it didn't worry me at all. And that's basically what I've done all my career. I mean, you can only do so much, and if you're not going fast enough, you can't just all of a sudden drive 2 seconds faster. I mean, you've got to be a realist. If for some reason one day someone else is winning and you can't get past them, well, you've either got to crash into them or you just take it on the chin and finish second and acknowledge that they were better on the day.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. Makes sense. All right. One of the members have asked, what was the origin of the nickname Gentleman Jim?
Well, that was given to me by Mike Raymond, the TV commentator from years gone by. And I don't know why he gave it to me, to be honest, but I was always quite quietly spoken and still are a little bit. And so I was always, polite and with everything that I did. And so he probably thought I was a bit of a gentleman. So he nicknamed me Gentleman Jim because there was a book that came out until years ago,
Mhm.
about a motorbike tire or something. Gentleman Jim, he was a whatever. But that's Gentleman Jim was the deal.
Okay. It's a good story. I didn't know it came from that. That's good. The other question we've got here is, how was your working relationship with Peter Brock? Which I think is an interesting question.
Listen, my relationship with Brocky was fantastic, but we never really worked together apart from driving the car together.
Yeah.
And then one year, obviously, I ran with him in the BMWs that I drove in '87.
Yep.
I went with Pete in '88.
Mhm.
And I would pick him up from the airport because my place was further away from the airport than his. So I pick him up and we go to the airport and, go to the motel, go to the races, do the racing. But he was terrific. He was great. He never said, "Oh, I don't know whether you're doing that right," or "No, you can't beat me."
Yeah.
He was just a genuine, brilliant driver.
Yeah.
But could rely on his talent rather than worrying about me. You know what I mean? And we shared wins and that, but never once, even at Bathurst when we were driving the Tiranas, did he say, "Listen, mate, you've got to just be really careful," and because he knew that I would.
Yeah.
And
Mutual
so we got along really well.
Yeah.
Really well. Yeah.
It's good. It sounds like you had good mutual respect.
Yes.
Another person's asked, do you have any motor racing heroes that you looked up to?
I sort of really went and did my own thing, but I mean, I've got to say that in New Zealand, when I was sort of a youngster, my dad took me to the New Zealand Grand Prix, and it was on an Ardmore aerodrome, the first couple that I went to. And so I've seen, the likes of Graham Hill, Jim Clark, Bruce McLaren, all those guys that were in the Formula One or the class of Formula One car that was then.
Sure.
And so I think I looked up to Bruce McLaren because he was a Kiwi. But I think Jim Clark was probably my favourite for some reason. I don't know why.
Yeah.
But I never held anyone on a pedestal and thinking, I want to be like him. I want to be like him.
No.
Because I knew there's no way I could be like him because I couldn't.
Well, obviously you came into your own.
But I did well.
Yeah. No, that's a good way to look at it. All right. So another question from one of the members is, how did you start out in motorsport, which you mentioned before you had your car back in New Zealand, England?
I started off motorsport. The first car that I ever drove in any competition at all was a Mini, 850 Mini. And I went to a standing quarter mile straight sprint. So you had a quarter mile, and then after you finished the quarter mile, you ran straight into a flying quarter mile.
Oh,
right? So you got your time for the standing quarter mile, and I still remember this day, it was a 23.6.
Yeah.
Standing quarter for my Mini. It was dead standard. I can't remember what the flying quarter was, but that was the first competition. But while I was at the sprint, a guy came up to me and said, "Oh, you like the Mini?" I said, "Well, I didn't know anything else." So I said, "Yeah, that's good." He said, "Oh, be prepared to spend a lot of money on them because the debris from the engine and the carbon and everything falls into the gearbox." So and this probably wasn't quite as right as he said it was. But I thought to myself, shit, I don't want that to happen. I don't have any money anyway, so I don't want to be fixing gearboxes. So I sold it and got an Anglia, which everyone told me were ultra reliable. Didn't hardly anything to them and went that way. And that's sort of the first time that I had a competitive race on a circuit was with the Anglia.
And was that true to cause with that Anglia, or was it actually a reliable car?
Oh yeah, no, it was fantastic. Yeah. I ran it as 1,000cc for a while because I couldn't afford to put the crank and rods in.
Sure.
To make it 1,200.
Yeah. Just good to be out there racing.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So there's some other questions here that we put together. So we've got in the Heritage Touring Cars series, is that something that you're still looking to compete in again in random events, pending COVID allowing that to go back to?
Yeah. No, I won't. I've sort of stopped driving in competition, but I'll still do things like Porsche club events that are held at Phillip Island or Winton.
Yep.
If I feel like it. I think once you decide that you're sort of semi-retired, I'm actually retired.
Yes.
To have a year off and then say, "Oh, geez, I think I'll get the Nissan out and go for a drive." It's not quite as easy as that. the Nissan's sitting here behind me, but it needs all the oils changed. It needs new brake pads. So you've got to do a lot of work on them to get them going. I mean, I can start that up. It takes me 10 seconds, but it's the internals. You've got to just treat them like babies.
Yeah.
And after not driving for a year, no, I remember what it was like and how good it was in the day. So I don't want to spoil it by me being not good enough.
Okay, no, that makes sense. So I guess it's a really special car for you, this HR31. What made it a championship-winning car in your mind, I guess?
Well, what made it a championship-winning car? I mean, to be honest, when I first joined Fred and the Nissan team, I remember there was a meeting in Fred's office, and he had all the guys, the mechanics in there to introduce me. I knew them all, but just to say that, you know, Jim's joining us this year.
Yeah.
And I remember I had a bit of a spiel, and I said, you know, I really believe that with the team that we've got here and the car, the HR31, I said, I really think we can win the championship in that car, because it's may not be as much horsepower as the Sierras, but I'm sure that it'll look after its tyres better, because it hasn't got the absolute mongrel torque that the Sierras had.
Yep.
And we'll lose on some tracks, but hopefully we might win on other tracks. And that's unbelievably what panned out. When I only said that because I was in the team, I didn't want to see him, you know, unconvinced that the car was any good.
Yeah.
But no, and that's what helped. It was on tight, abrasive tracks. It was brilliant because it had heaps. It had 460 horsepower, where the Sierras had 640 horsepower.
Yeah.
We both weighed the same.
Mm-hmm.
The Sierras had the same size tyre.
Yeah.
And I was sort of reasonably good at saving the tyres, still driving fast, but not burning them out. Well, the Sierra guys, they couldn't help themselves. I mean, the fact that all the torque the Sierra motor produced, that they would wheel spin and slide around the place, and on a really ultra fast circuit, they could get away with that.
Yeah.
But on like Amaru Park and Winton and Lakeside, where I think we won the races, the car needed to be reliable as well, but it needed to be able to go around at a good speed without starting off like a rocket ship, just slowing down because your tyres are burning.
Degrading tyres. Yeah, no, that makes sense. That obviously is a clear advantage for this car. Yeah.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you about driving in the Heritage Touring Car Series.
Yeah.
I wanted to know if you found yourself getting mixed up in the same competitive battles with drivers in similar cars from back then that are out there, or did you find it was just a great chance to take the cars out and an exhibition then and kind of get to drive them again?
No, that's not. I probably treated it a bit differently, saying it was my car and all that, and not that I was punishing on anyone else's cars.
No.
But the guys in the Heritage Touring cars probably aren't guys that are 10/10 drivers. They're close, but not quite. So I wanted to just display the car.
Yep.
Relive the memories that we had years ago.
Yep.
And come out with it unscathed.
Yeah.
But boy, I soon found that they were really, really, really serious about this.
Really?
You know? And if they could beat me, they bloody hell, you know.
Yeah.
But anyway, the outcome of the car went great, and we had some terrific battles with guys in the Sierras.
Awesome.
And it was great. It was really, really good. But being old cars, you know, you can do all you can to them, but you can't tell whether magnesium uprights, for instance, when they're going to crack or break.
Yeah.
Because you can crack test them and they're fine.
Mm-hmm.
The next race you go out and it could break and fall apart.
Yeah.
Because they're old. And so I've always had a bit of a, you could say a love-hate relationship with old cars, because I love driving them, but I'm wary that the fact that you can't replace everything in them.
Yes.
You know, and they have got weak points.
I'm sure the members can relate to that totally. With a lot of old cars and old Datsuns and Nissans in the club, they're probably dealing with similar problems with their daily or weekend drivers. All right, I wanted to ask you as well about what was the draw to Nissan and racing for the team back then in the late 80s and early 90s as they developed the R32.
So start saying again?
Yeah. So I was just wanting to ask you about what was the draw? What drew you to racing for Nissan?
Okay.
Yeah, back in the late 80s, early 90s.
Well, we were at Bathurst in 1988. And I was driving the M3 BMWs with Brocky, and I knew that 87 we won the championship, right? 88, the Nissans were better, the Sierras were better, Commodores were better, and the little M3 was sort of about all you could get out of it.
Yeah.
And I only probably went with the BMW. So Brock got the BMWs to run the following, you know, in 88 from BMW.
Yeah.
Well, because we sort of, the team had dissolved, and BMW probably felt a little bit guilty of leaving me in the lurch. So when the cars went to Brocky, they said the other condition is that you take Jim and he runs the second car.
Oh, wow.
And that's what they did.
Okay.
So I was always looking for something to go out after 88.
Yes.
And Brocky was getting Sierras. And I thought, yeah, I don't know whether I want to drive a Sierra because there's so many of them.
Mm-hmm.
And at Bathurst in 88, our car had broken down. Brocky had hit a tyre in the middle of Conrod Straight and ripped the radiator, all the coolers all out of the car. So we were out of the event. And Fred's cars hadn't gone brilliantly. And we were walking around behind the pits, and I was walking one way, Fred was walking the other. As we come to the other, I said, "Hi, Fred." He said, "Hi, Jim." He says, "What are you doing next year?" Just casually. And I said, I don't know. Whether I'll stay with Brocky or not, I'm not sure. He says, "Would you drive for me?" And I said, yeah, I would. He says, "Ring me on Monday when you get home." So Monday come around, and I sped home from Bathurst to Ringwood, and rang Fred, and he basically said, "No, I want you to drive for us." He was had lost Glenn Seaton because of he went with his father and run Sierras.
Correct. Yeah.
And so he lost his main driver, you might say.
Yeah.
So he needed to replace Glenn with another driver, but Scafie was in the background, but the Nissan and Fred didn't want to put all the pressure on Scafie to try and win the championship.
Yeah.
So they needed a driver with experience that had a few titles, so he could go and say to Nissan at the time, basically, we've got Jim Richards, he's done this.
Yeah.
And that gave them confidence that because they were losing Glenn, it was no drama because someone else was taking over.
That's right.
The same thing.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'll tell you the story. He on the phone to Fred. Fred, it's Jim here. Oh, Jim, yeah. He was pretty blunt. He said, we can't promise anything. He said, we've got the HR31. We're still developing it. It's a good little car, but it's probably not going to win us a title. But there are rumours that we may have a better car coming in 89, 90. And I said, "Oh, that's great." And he said, "Well, okay, how much money do you want?" And I said, "What?" He said, "How much money do you want to drive for me?" And I said, "Oh, Jesus, I haven't thought about it. I don't really know." I said, "Would I get a bonus for placings?" He said, No bonuses. Just tell me what you want, and that's what you get for the year.
All right.
And so he mentioned the figure, and it was about 6 times more than I was getting with Brock. And I said, "Yeah, okay." And years later, when Fred and I had been going to going to Nissans or car clubs or whatever to have a chat together to the competitors, the old story I always say, I said, "Fredo, remember when you told me I would drive for you for this much money?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Yeah." He said, I said, "I would have driven for half that."
Yeah, right. That's cool. All right, so I've got one more question for you. And I just wanted to ask, what's the standout highlight of your career? Was there a turning point that just made you realize that would specifically be a moment to remember, or is it looking back sort of thing?
Well, normally it's like cars. People say, "What's the best car you've ever driven?" Well, it's normally the last one.
Yeah.
Because it's the latest model. It's a modified. But I think when I realised in New Zealand, it was I'd driven twin cam escorts, Ford escorts, and we wanted to run in the outright championship. So my good friend and I, who's not with us now, decided we'd build a Mustang because that was the car that we were racing and was winning the championships.
Yeah.
So we got the Mustang going. I won't bore you with the details of all that. Got the Mustang going. First time out, it had a bearing problem in the engine because we had the oil tank in the boot and too small an oil line coming to the engine.
Yep.
So to fix that, we unbolted the oil tank from the boot and then shortened the oil line. And Murray, the guy who built the car, sat on the floor of the car in where the passenger seat would be, but it didn't have one. And we had an old rug, and he held onto the oil tank with a rug. So the oil tank was another 10 feet from the engine.
Yeah.
And we went down the straight, fixed it. So
that's brilliant.
The fact that we had a few placings, but never won a race probably for about a season.
Yeah.
We went to a little short track called Levin. Now, some of you may or may not know that. it was a bit like Amaroo. It was a great little track, fantastic. And we actually beat all the superstars from New Zealand at that meeting. And once we won that meeting in their Mustang, we knew that we could do it again. And that's when it all started. So in realistic terms, that was a turning point because we were just so relieved that the car we built had won a race against all the stars.
Yeah.
But you know, I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed the championships for the Nissan and the BM and everything, and I love driving the Porsches and the V8 supercars. That was great. So it's been fantastic, and I've always driven whatever I could. I didn't mind if I was NASCAR, I had to go at that.
Yep.
Thoroughly enjoyed it. But the different gears that go by are different reasons to keep going, or to have a have a good time type of thing. So yeah, you got to sort of haven't got just one thing.
Yeah.
Right?
No, it makes sense. No, well, you know, again, a huge thanks from myself for giving up your time, and obviously from the club, we're super appreciative. Being diehard, it's great to see a car that obviously you love so much.
Yeah.
You brought it. So yeah, thanks again, and true to your name, Gentleman Jim, thanks for giving up the time. So I'll throw it back to you, Tony.